The accused had direct access to the accounting system and could log items of expenditure himself, although the majority of such work was done by another member of staff under his direction. In relation to many of the items which the accused purchased for his own use or that of others, he provided misleading descriptions and/or accounting codes under which the purchases were recorded on the accounting software. While there were hundreds of such purchases which were inaccurately recorded, 3 examples demonstrate how this worked in practice. The accused made 2 purchases from CW Sellers Dura watches using £9,350.25 of SNP funds. On the 8th of June 2017, he purchased a white Bremont watch for £4,555.25. On the 12th of July 2017, he purchased a black Bremont watch for £4,795. Both transactions were recorded on the accounting software as event merchandise. These watches were found by police during their search of party headquarters in April 2023. The accused purchased a travel watch roll from Smytheson in November 2017 using £332 of SNP funds. This transaction was recorded on the accounting software under the code Staff Expenses and described as Doubletree, the Glasgow City Hotel. The accused purchased an OXO Good Grips 2-piece silicone egg poacher set on the 7th of July 2020 using £23.98 of SNP funds. This transaction was recorded on the accounting software under the code Computer Hardware Purchases and described as Ethernet cabling. The earliest purchases which form part of the embezzlement were made with the online retailer Amazon. Over the course of more than 12 years, the accused made 383 such purchases from Amazon using party charge cards. A full list of the dates and items purchased is contained within Schedule 2 to the indictment as amended. As can be seen there, a single purchase may include more than one item. In total, the accused spent £42,660.74 on items purchased from Amazon which were not for party purposes. The items were mostly delivered to either his home address or to the party headquarters, with a small number being delivered to the addresses of family members. From the 24th of April 2020, all but one of the Amazon purchases were delivered to his home address. Between June 2015 and June 2022, the accused also made 238 such purchases from other retailers using party charge cards. A full list of the dates, retailers and items purchased is contained within Schedule 3 to the indictment as amended. Again, a single purchase may include more than one item. In total, the accused spent £139,971 on items purchased from other retailers which were not for party purposes. All of these items were purchased online. I beg your pardon, almost all of these items were purchased online. Again, most were delivered to his home address or to the party headquarters, with a small number being delivered to the addresses of family members. From the 13th of March 2020, all purchases were delivered to his home address. Many of the items purchased, particularly from Amazon, were inexpensive articles for everyday living, such as cleaning products and batteries. Others were expensive items from luxury retailers. There were a significant number of purchases of kitchenware and food and beverage related items, items for gardening, watches, clothing and leisure goods such as books, DVDs and video games and consoles. The following is a small sample of the total range of items purchased. Items from Mont Blanc with a total cost of £24,342.60. Items from Smytheson, a retailer of luxury stationery, leather goods, diaries and fashion products with a total cost of £24,495.50. Items from Dyson with a total cost of £6,085.86. Items from Le Creuset with a total cost of £5,319.28. Coffee machines with a total cost of £8,991.65. Two of these, Dura coffee machines purchased at a cost of £3,231.90 and £1,865.75 respectively, were found by police at the accused's home. Cup warmers with a total cost of £1,782.99. Items from Joseph with a total value of £749.94. reed diffusers and candles from Joe Malone with a total cost of £1,056. Umbrellas with a total cost of £1,990.50. 2 salt and pepper grinders from Lalique costing £2,618.16. A robotic lawnmower, including installation for his home address, costing £3,070. This item was misdescribed in the accounting software as spending on legal fees and was found at his home when it was searched by police. A hand-chased silver wine coaster from Hamilton & Inches Jewellers costing £3,500. This item was misdescribed as spending on leadership expenses with the description Hamilton & Inches sterling silver presentation quails. It was found at the accused's home when it was searched by police. Some of the items listed in the schedules were recovered by police during the search of the accused's home in April 2023, with a smaller number of others being recovered from the SNP headquarters. Others were found but left in situ at the accused's home, including a fitted home library, which was partly paid for with SNP funds, a wooden library ladder, a bathroom vanity unit, a kitchen unit for the boiler, and fitted mats in the hallway. The majority of the items purchased were not found during the searches. On the 30th of October 2019, the accused used his SNP charge card to pay a £30 parking ticket with which he had been issued at Victoria Hospital, Kirkcaldy, 5 days earlier. As CEO of the party, the accused had ultimate approval of all expenses claims submitted, including his own. Although there was an electronic portal through which expenses claims should have been submitted, the accused stated to colleagues that he could not access it and was thereby able to submit his own claims without necessarily providing a receipt or invoice. On 4 occasions between January 2019 and September 2020, he made false claims and received money from the party in relation to expenses which he had not incurred. The details of those false claims, including dates and sums, are listed in Schedule 1 to the indictment. The total sum received by the accused by way of false expenses claims was £18,408.91. In relation to 2 of those claims, false invoices were created by the accused to give the impression that they were for legitimate party expenditure. One of those false invoices, for £12,042 from Apple, was recovered by police from the party's auditors. Comparison with a genuine invoice from Apple for purchases by the SNP shows that it was used as the basis for the false invoice created by the accused. A false entry on the party's fixed asset register for the same amount was also added by the accused, with the description of the item given as Apple processor. No such item was ever purchased. The second false invoice, for £2,478 from Manufactum, was sent by the accused to the party's auditors when this payment to him was queried by them. An entry on the party's fixed asset register had been created, but the item to which it referred was not described. In response to the query, the accused stated that this had been for studio light fittings, which he had inadvertently paid for with his own credit card rather than a party one, hence the expenses claim. He also sent a false invoice which he had created purporting to show the purchase of 4 lights. No such lights had been purchased. Rather, the accused had used his own money to purchase from that manufacturer a number of items with no connection to the party. A genuine invoice from the manufacturer in that amount was found by the police within his home when it was searched in April 2023. 2 of the items purchased, a lawn aerator and garden edger, were also found within his garage during the search. However, a number of other items, including the most expensive purchased, a modern doorbell priced at £2,055, were not found. In June 2021, the accused sold an iPad belonging to the party to the Technology Recycle Group for £701. He received the proceeds of the sale directly into his personal bank account. A significant proportion of the total sum embezzled relates to spending on 3 vehicles for the accused's own use. The first such vehicle was a new Volkswagen Golf which he purchased in early 2016. The total price paid was £32,989, with part of that being supplied by the accused in the form of a deposit and the trade-in value of another car. That left a balance of £16,489, which the accused paid by direct transfer from the SNP account on the 29th of March 2016. The car was not an SNP asset and was used only by the accused. He was not entitled to a company car in his role as CEO. The second such vehicle was a new Jaguar I-Pace, which the accused ordered on the 9th of September 2019. The total price of the vehicle was £81,277, part of which was funded by trading in the previously mentioned Volkswagen Golf. A deposit of £12,027 was paid by the accused from his own bank account. That sum was part of the total received by the accused from the SNP as a result of the fraudulent expenses claims previously described. The balance of £57,500 was paid by the accused in 2 direct transfers from the SNP account on the 1st of November 2019. This was required as no payment greater than £30,000 could be made from the SNP account. The vehicle was not an SNP asset and was used only by the accused. The accused created a false invoice in which the name of the car dealer from whom the Jaguar had been purchased was changed from Pentland Jaguar East to Pentland Motor Company Limited. The customer address listed was the SNP headquarters rather than his home address, which was what he had actually provided to the dealer, and the description of the item purchased was given as stage payment. He passed it to the person responsible for adding items to the SNP accounts with a note that it was to be coded under the heading Transport. During a subsequent audit, this was one of a number of transactions about which he was asked for further information. He claimed that the payment was for staging for SNP events and that it had related to a planned national tour of key communicators from the party, which had had to be postponed for various reasons, including the COVID-19 pandemic. On the 27th of August 2021, the accused sold the vehicle, receiving the £47,378.76 proceeds into his personal bank account. The third such vehicle was a new Niesman and Bischoff Smooth 7.4e motorhome, which the accused ordered on the 14th of October 2020. The total price of the vehicle was £124,550. The accused made 3 payments totalling £12,500 as a deposit with his SNP charge card. The balance of £112,050 was paid by the accused in 4 direct transfers from the SNP account on the 7th of December 2020. The motorhome was delivered to the accused at the Holbeath Industrial Estate on 22nd January 2021 and driven by him to his mother's home in Dunfermline, where it remained until it was seized by police officers on the 5th of April 2023. When seized, the odometer showed that the vehicle had only ever been driven for 4 miles. The accused created a false invoice in the name of the motorhome dealer. Again, the customer address listed was the SNP headquarters rather than his home address, which he had actually provided to the dealer, and the account name was changed from Murrell to SNP Murrell. In addition, the description of the vehicle concerned was altered to describe a van rather than a motorhome, and many details were removed, including those of the specification and additional options chosen by the accused, which included security, tracking and navigation systems and a television. This false invoice was provided to the person responsible for adding items to the accounts. When the purchase was later raised by the auditor, the motorhome was added to the party's fixed asset register, but it was never used or seen by any other party member or employee. The accused was the registered keeper of the vehicle, which was insured for him only to drive for social, domestic and pleasure purposes. After its purchase, the accused suggested to other party employees that the motorhome could have been used for campaigning purposes, but it was not. When seized by police officers, there were no campaign materials or other SNP paraphernalia within, and the motorhome was not branded. It was configured exactly as a motorhome used for pleasure would be. The day after he had ordered the motorhome, the accused purchased from Amazon 3 guides to inspirational journeys around Scotland, England and Wales, and Ireland in a camper van or motorhome. Within the motorhome were a number of the items mentioned in the schedules to the indictment, including Le Creuset and Joseph kitchen implements, an Alessi teapot, and various molten brown toiletries. A complaint about possible mismanagement of SNP finances was first made to Police Scotland in March 2021. Other complaints followed, and in response the police began to investigate. It was during the course of that investigation that evidence of the accused's embezzlement was uncovered and became a focus for further investigation. On the 5th of April 2023, police officers executed search warrants at the accused's home address and the party headquarters and seized the motorhome from the accused's mother's driveway. The accused was arrested and taken to Falkirk Police Office, where he was interviewed, making no comment in response to all questions asked before being released from custody. On the 18th of April 2024, he attended at Falkirk Police Office, where he was arrested and again interviewed, again making no comment in response to all questions asked. At the end of the interview, he was charged with embezzlement, to which he made no response and released from custody.
Gareth, for the first time that I certainly can remember in judicial history here in Scotland, we have been able to film the man accused of crimes, the man convicted of embezzling £400,000 from Scotland's largest political party, the SNP, came in handcuffs, stony-faced, looking slightly red in his suit, not making eye contact whatsoever with the people who had gathered in the public gallery or indeed the members of the press, handcuffs at the ready for those security officers who unchained them while the cameras watched. And that is footage that is extraordinary given who this man is, who this man was. Nicola Sturgeon's estranged husband, the man who was the chief executive officer of the SNP for 20 years. At the time, for many of those years, where Nicola Sturgeon herself was the leader of that party and Scotland's First Minister. Today's reason for being here, the reason for this hearing, was because of that admission of guilt from Peter Murrell this time almost last week. That avoided a trial, and that is because forensic police officers, financial investigators within law enforcement have spent years scouring the SNP accounts to try and nail Peter Murrell for his crimes. And that meant that at the start of last week here in Edinburgh, he sounds like he had no option but to admit his guilt to the tune of £400,000 of embezzlement of party funds. And what did we learn during this hearing? Well, I can tell you it was quite extraordinary. Let's skip straight to the sort of headline moment of this, that luxury camper van that Peter Murrell purchased to the tune of £124,000 in October of 2020. Now, we know that Murrell made those payments on the SNP card, the credit card that he had. We know that he signed off his own expenses, so that was a fairly easy transaction to make. Details emerging that it had only driven 4 miles. A false invoice was created. And on that invoice, he said that the address was SNP headquarters. Well, we now know, and we have done for many years, that the true location of that vehicle was his mother's house in Fife. It never set foot near SNP headquarters, and it never left that driveway whatsoever. He changed the description of what it was supposed to be used for from a motorhome to a van in order to try and make it easier for those auditors who potentially would come asking questions, and they certainly did. But Peter Murrell thought he had an answer for that. He said that this was going to be used for social pleasure, domestic purposes. That's what it was registered on the insurance as. And he told the auditors, well, this is for SNP campaigning. We now know what was revealed in that hearing, that 1 day later he bought 3 books titled Guides to Inspirational Journeys Around Scotland. Now, why would the SNP's chief executive officer, who had planned to use that vehicle for party jobs, for party campaigning, be buying those books, be furnishing that vehicle with things like molten soaps and the like, kitchen utensils and that sort of thing? So that is a major revelation that came through this hearing. And forgive me, I'm just looking down at the notes that I made here. Some other striking moments: the salt and pepper grinders to the tune of £2,600 that he bought on SNP finances. He made 383 purchases from Amazon, stretching back all the way to 2010. £42,000 he spent on Amazon deliveries. He got those mostly delivered to his home address on the outskirts of Glasgow, that same address that he shared with his estranged wife, Nicola Sturgeon. And we also know that he was buying watches for thousands of pounds, £9,300 here, £4,000 here. And the reasons that he was putting down on the SNP finances as part of the accounts, as part of this embezzlement, he was describing things as event purchases, event merchandise for things like £4,000 watches. So that clearly was a red flag to the officers who raided that marital home of Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell in 2023. The court also hearing that as part of this prosecution there were 318 pages worth of evidence. Well, that was condensed into around half an hour's worth of a narrative that was read out by the prosecution here in court. Absolutely no reaction whatsoever from Peter Murrell himself. He looked straight ahead at the judge, barely looking at the prosecution. And you may be wondering, did we hear from his defence lawyers? Well, very briefly at the end, let me just look here. The defence stood up and said that they agreed with the facts that were read out here. There was some talk around proceeds of crime because let's remember these were purchases, a luxury lifestyle that was bankrolled by the SNP funds that ultimately had been paid for by people across the country who thought they were trying to fund a second Scottish independence referendum. They were putting £10 here, £20 there into the party's coffers to put aside, ring fence for a second Scottish independence referendum. We now know that did not happen. Peter Murrell fleeced the party and fleeced those around him. He conned them. He managed to trick them for 12 years. Now, Nicola Sturgeon herself, she was arrested as part of this investigation. She spent hours in police custody facing those questions. She too made no comment during that interview and was later released without charge pending further inquiries. And then fast forward a year or so later, police said they would not be taking forward a prosecution and there was no case to answer for her during that situation. So what will happen to those assets? Will there be discussion around that marital home that was at the centre of the police investigation that was raided by those officers? Will that now be seen as up for grabs when it comes to prosecutors trying to claw back some of that money? Who knows? We are unclear at this stage whose name that property was in. Other assets that Peter Murrell had, they will all be examined as part of the next phase of proceedings when it comes to the proceeds of crime. Nicola Sturgeon herself has been clear. She issued a statement in the aftermath of that guilty plea on Monday of last week here at this court building in Edinburgh. And she said that she is shocked, she was deceived, she had no idea that her husband was up to such criminal antics over a period of 12 years, and for that he will serve many a year behind bar. She then said she would be making no further comment before then proceeding in the following days to attend book festivals and speak at length about the deception at the hands of her husband as she would see it, speaking to crowds in Ireland, of which we were in the room. Sky News, I attempted to ask questions from Nicola Sturgeon, not because her husband has been found guilty of crimes, but because there has been a suggestion, an accusation, a claim from some of those people who were in the SNP's ruling body around the time of these crimes happening, 2020, 2021, when money started going missing on a grand scale, the purchase of the motorhome and that sort of thing. And people within the SNP's senior ranks were asking questions, and they suggest that Nicola Sturgeon and some other senior figures attempted to sideline them, to shut down those concerns, and that is an accusation that she flatly denies. We did try to ask her those questions herself at that book festival in Ireland last week, but she wasn't in the mood for answering questions. I ended up doing a runner into the kitchen of that hotel. She did then, though, in the days afterwards, appear for a televised interview, a sit-down interview, where she decided to give her truth as part of this, in which case she said she feels she is being held to account for the crimes of a man, for the crimes of a husband who deceived her for so many years. So put that aside, the criminality aside of her husband, I think there are still questions for Nicola Sturgeon about those allegations that were swirling at the time around her shutting down, apparently, concerns around the finances. What happens next? Well, Peter Murrell was led away in cuffs back down to the cells and will be exiting the back of this building in a prison van. Quite the fall from grace for one of the biggest one-time political figures in this country. Next on the agenda, next on the schedule is his sentencing, which is due to take place in a matter of weeks. And we'll bring that to you here on Sky News. Extensive coverage on the app and the website of today's proceedings, including that extraordinary moment of cameras inside this building, inside the courtroom, filming Peter Murrell in handcuffs during this extraordinary moment.